It always happens after the moment is gone. You walk away looking calm, collected, but inside something starts shaking. A sentence you said suddenly feels too sharp, a smile you gave feels out of place. Their brief silence becomes a storm you can't outrun. So you replay it, not once, not twice, but until the memory aches like a bruise you keep pressing. You rewrite your words, re-edit your tone, rehear their breathing like it held a secret judgment. And somewhere between the replay and the regret, you whisper the fear you never say out loud: what if that small moment changed everything? Because for people like you, no conversation ever ends when it ends. It ends only when your heart finally lets go. The psychology behind people who overthink past conversations is softer, deeper, and far more human than most realize. Psychologists describe this lingering mental replay as post-event rumination, a quiet loop the mind falls into after a social moment ends. It's when the body has already walked away, but the heart stays behind, still listening to the echoes of what was said, and what might have been misunderstood. Science calls it perseverative cognition, a state where the brain continues holding on to stress long after the event has passed. But for people who live inside this pattern, it feels less like cognition and more like a soft storm that refuses to leave the room of their mind. Psychologists link this especially with social anxiety, where every pause, expression, or shift in tone becomes something to decode. Not because the person is fragile, but because they've learned to protect themselves by analyzing what others might think. The replay becomes a shield, a way of making sure they weren't too much, or not enough, or somehow unworthy in the tiny spaces between words. You know the quiet at night, the soft ache that doesn't belong to this moment but to a memory unsettled. You feel the weight of unsaid words hanging in your chest. You trace every micro-expression on someone's face, the flicker of confusion, the subtle frown, the pause before they respond, and in your mind, you turn those into verdicts. You may have smiled, you may have nodded, but inside, you replay. You scroll through messages you sent, dreading you wrote weird, awkward, wrong. You feel your throat tighten when you imagine them telling someone else about how you spoke, like a secret you didn't know you carried. It isn't just regret, it's a silent fear. A fear that maybe, you showed too much, asked too little, revealed something you shouldn't. And when tonight is over and the world outside quiets down, your mind turns into a slow film editor, cutting, rearranging, zooming in on slights, shifting tones, adjusting lighting. Because the thing about memory is, it doesn't need consent. It just rewrites. You often replay conversations in your head long after they're done, sometimes minutes after, sometimes hours, sometimes days. You avoid initiating conversation sometimes, because it feels safer than risking another mental replay. You reread texts or emails you sent, analyzing each word, pause, punctuation, wondering if there was hidden meaning, or if you came across as unsure. Sometimes, when someone doesn't respond immediately, your mind floods with interpretations. Maybe I said something wrong, maybe they're upset, maybe I bored them. You struggle to let go of social interactions even when they're over, their silence lingers in you like a faint afterimage you can't shake. People who overthink past conversations didn't become this way out of nowhere. It often begins quietly, years earlier, in rooms where emotions were loud but clarity was scarce. In families where approval felt conditional. In classrooms where one mistake turned into a whisper that echoed too long. In friendships where they were told they were too sensitive, too quiet, too much, or not enough. Somewhere along the way, they learned a dangerous equation: attention equals to evaluation, silence equals disappointment, tone equals danger. So they tuned themselves to every shift in the room, the raised eyebrow, the sigh, the half-second pause, the unreadable expression. They became emotional detectives long before they understood what they were trying to solve. For many, the root is this: not knowing where they stood with people who mattered. Not knowing if they were safe. Not knowing if they were allowed to be human, imperfect, spontaneous, real. So they began replaying moments in their head as a form of protection. They believed, without knowing that if they analyze everything, they won't get hurt again. This is how post-event rumination is born, not from weakness, but from wounds, not from oversensitivity, but from a survival strategy. People who overthink conversations are not dramatic. They are people who once needed to predict danger. People who learn to scan for disapproval because disapproval once carried consequences. People who built worlds inside their minds because the world outside felt unpredictable. Rumination becomes a shelter, even when it hurts. It feels like control, it feels like preparation, it feels like safety in a mind that never felt fully safe. And maybe that's the truth no one ever told them. Your overthinking didn't begin in your conversations, it began in your childhood silence, the silence where you were left alone to interpret everything yourself. Psychologists note that after social interactions, some people enter a repetitive cycle of re-evaluating what they said, how they appeared, and how others may have judged them. It is not intentional, it is automatic, a loop formed from earlier experiences of uncertainty or social threat. The mind is trying to fix the conversation after it's already over. This is the broader mechanism behind repetitive, lingering thought. It's the brain staying stuck in a stress response long after the moment has passed, as if the conversation is still happening somewhere inside the nervous system. Instead of releasing the event, the mind keeps turning it over, searching for closure that never arrives. Research shows that people who fear negative evaluation often mentally replay conversations to analyze what went wrong or what could have been misinterpreted. It's not about the other person, it's about the internal fear of being misunderstood, judged, or rejected. This is science, but science only tells you what happens, your heart knows why. This is where psychology becomes human, where the terms soften into truths. Psychologists call it rumination, you call it trying to make sure you didn't ruin anything. Trying to make sure you didn't lose anyone. Trying to make sense of the moment because you never learned how to trust that the moment was enough. Researchers say your mind keeps looping, but you feel something different, your chest tightening, your breath shortening, your thoughts replaying like a movie stuck on rewind, because the fear didn't end when the conversation ended. Science calls it negative evaluation fear. But for you, it's simpler and heavier. What if they think I'm strange? What if I said the wrong thing? What if they don't like me anymore? What if I embarrassed myself and didn't know? It's not about being dramatic. It's about never having felt fully certain of your place in other people's hearts. This is the emotional truth behind the psychology. You don't overthink because you want to, you overthink because you care, because you feel deeply, because your heart learned long ago that silence might hide danger. And yet, hidden inside this painful pattern is something profoundly human. You replay conversations because you want connection. Because you want to belong, because you don't want to hurt anyone, because you don't want to lose anyone. Because somewhere inside you is a child still waiting for someone to say, "You're okay, you're understood, you didn't mess anything up." You know this moment well. You leave a conversation, walk 5 steps away, and suddenly, your mind tugs on your sleeve. Go back, it whispers, check what just happened, and so the replay begins. You remember the way your voice cracked when you greeted them. The moment you laughed too late, the second you interrupted without meaning to, the question you answered too quickly, or too slowly. Later, in the quiet of your room, you feel a familiar unease rise inside your chest. That one sentence you said, it echoes louder than anything else in your day. You pull the memory apart like thread from a worn-out sweater, trying to understand what wasn't meant to be analyzed at all. When someone doesn't text back, your mind fills the gaps with entire stories. Stories where you were too much, stories where you said the wrong thing, stories where one imperfect moment defines you completely. When a friend laughs at something unrelated, you wonder if it was actually about you. When someone looks away mid-sentence, you wonder if you were boring them. When someone seems distracted, your first instinct is to scan your words for mistakes, and even when the conversation went well, even when they smiled, even when they hugged you, even when they said everything was fine, you still felt the trembling inside. But here's the truth no one ever taught you. Your overthinking is not proof that something is wrong with you, it's proof that you care, deeply, profoundly, sometimes painfully. You replay conversations because connection matters to you, words matter to you, people matter to you. The world taught you to fear mistakes, but your heart never stopped wanting to love gently. So what if the loop in your mind isn't a flaw? To feel this much, to care this much, to notice what others overlook, this is not weakness, it is a different kind of strength. Maybe overthinking isn't your mind trying to sabotage you, maybe it's your soul trying to protect you. Trying to make sure you don't lose the people you cherish, trying to keep you close to what feels meaningful. If you've lived your whole life scanning conversations for danger, then maybe no one ever showed you how to scan them for warmth. Maybe no one ever taught you that people don't dissect your words the way you dissect your own. Maybe no one ever told you that human connection is messy, imperfect, and still deeply loved. You're allowed to exist in relationships without performing, predicting, or planning. So here is a softer way to see yourself: you are someone who wants to get it right. Someone who wants to be understood, someone who has carried too many emotions alone, someone who learned to anticipate hurt because hurt was once the only thing that felt predictable. But you are not that child anymore, and the world is not as sharp as it used to be. You may notice, gently, slowly, that not every silence is rejection. Not every pause is disappointing, not every unread message is anger, not every awkward moment is a verdict on your worth. You may begin to realize that conversations are not tests, people are not judges, you are not on trial. Your thoughts are louder than reality, but reality is kinder than you think. It's okay to feel the tension in your chest, it's okay to need reassurance, it's okay to want to belong. These needs don't make you difficult, they make you human. And beneath all your overthinking is a longing so pure, so tender, so honest, the longing to feel safe in the presence of others. There is a deeper truth beneath your overthinking, a truth not about fear, but about longing. You replay conversations because you want to be understood, you want to be seen in the way your heart speaks, softly, sincerely, without the noise of misinterpretation. You want your presence to land gently in the world, without harm, without confusion, without regret. People like you aren't trying to fix the past, you're trying to protect the future. There's a quiet intelligence in that. Some souls feel the world more intensely than others. They read meaning inside pauses, find stories hidden in expressions, sense emotional weather long before anyone else notices the clouds. You are one of those souls. You are wired for depth, for connection that is real, undiluted, honest. It is why you remember conversations long after they end, it is why you notice what others miss, it is why your mind lingers on moments that felt significant, even if no one else realized their importance. Your overthinking is the shadow side of your sensitivity, the cost of having a heart that listens too deeply. And yet, sensitivity is the doorway to empathy, to kindness, to awareness, to the part of life that feels alive, meaningful, and spiritual. Some say the soul does not speak through words, it speaks through the tremble you feel in a conversation, the softness in your voice when you're afraid. The ache that surfaces when you replay a moment wishing it had gone differently. Maybe your overthinking isn't a mistake, maybe it's your soul reminding you that connection matters, that love matters, that being understood matters. And maybe it's reminding you of something else too: you are not alone in this depth. There are others who feel the world like you do, and somewhere in that shared human tenderness, you are held. You don't need to silence every thought, you don't need to fully trust every social moment, you don't need to erase the replay in your mind. Healing begins smaller than that. It begins with remembering that you are not in danger when a conversation ends. It begins with noticing, just noticing, when you slip into the loop. It begins with placing a gentle hand on your own heart and saying, "It's okay, we're safe now." Healing isn't about never overthinking again, it's about recognizing the moment your nervous system is trying to protect you, and choosing to breathe with it, not fight it. You may find comfort in tiny reframes. Instead of, "I must have said something wrong," you might whisper, "I spoke with sincerity." Instead of, "They probably misunderstood me," you might tell yourself, "People see more than I give myself credit for." Instead of, "What if I ruined everything?" you might gently ask, what if everything is actually okay? And slowly, you may begin to feel the world soften. Conversations may stop feeling like tests, moments may stop feeling like traps. Healing isn't a transformation, it's a returning to the part of you that always wanted peace more than perfection. Let yourself return, inch by inch. Here is your quiet truth: you were never hard to understand. You were just afraid of being misunderstood. And now, you are learning to breathe again.